Welcome to the Universal Heart Podcast, where real people share real stories without polish, without perfection, and without pretending. Life is anything other than beautifully complicated. This is a space where we peel back the layers of human experience and talk honestly about the things that shape us, our struggles, our healing, our resilience, and the heart that carries us forward. Today, I'm sitting down with someone whose work and personal journey both speak directly to the heart of what this podcast is about. Brittany McCrea is a North Bay psychotherapist specializing in anxiety disorders, but more than that, she's a woman who has lived through storms of life, rebuilt her footing, and learned what it means to choose herself. She's a daughter, a sister, a mother, a stepmother, a partner, someone who's navigated divorce with grace, loss with courage, and education with relentless determination. Her story is layered, it's relatable, and it's deeply human. Brittany brings not just a clinical expertise to her practice, but lived understanding of anxiety, burnout, grief, rebuilding, and starting again, even when the world feels heavy. And that's why I'm so grateful to share this conversation with you and with Brittany, because at the Universal Heart, we believe every story holds power, every voice has value, and every journey teaches us something about our own. So settle in, take a deep breath, and we're going to welcome Brittany McCrea. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I am good. I enjoyed that intro. That summarizes quite a bit of things.
And it's funny. So most people don't realize this is the first episode of this podcast, and we're still learning technology, and I'm still figuring out the platform. So most people don't realize I had no idea whether you could hear the intro or not.
Yeah, no, it sums up pretty well. Thank you.
So just to give a little bit of a background, Brittany and I know each other through my now wife, who was her best friend. And I was introduced to Brittany with quite a fast progression to from best friend of wife to friend of mine. And quite love her story, love everything that she does, everything that she worked towards as I learn little bits because I'm still getting to know her, getting to know you. So when I started this podcast, it seemed like a good place to start with somebody I knew, somebody I was comfortable with, but somebody who has a story a lot like mine with many, many, many layers. So if I could get you just to tell our listeners a little bit about who you are, and we'll kind of go from there.
Name is Brittany. I was born and raised in North Bay. I decided to leave to go to school in Guelph, even though my mom had promised me a car if I would stay. So I went to school in Guelph, loved it, said I'd never come back. Ended up going and doing, so I did psychology there, ended up doing addiction counseling in Aurelia, and then started dating a boy, came back home. So I met my husband, started a family, and that's kind of, yeah. I recently started a psychotherapy practice in North Bay, so I've been working on that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So one question that I came to from every guest that we have does a little bit of a questionnaire about, who they are and what they are. And one of the questions that came up for me was that you share about wearing many relational hats. So daughter, divorced or divorcee, partner, mother, stepmother. Mm-hmm. How have those identities shaped the way that you show up in your job and in your connection with clients?
I feel like when 10 years ago, I started off trying to be an addiction counselor, and I didn't have much life experience. I wasn't a mom. I hadn't been through many things. And I felt like, as much as you don't have to go through the same things that your clients have been to understand, I think having some life experience does contribute to what you're able to offer in the room. So going through a divorce, there's a lot of relationship conflict that I deal with clients. I can understand some of the struggles that come with that. Having a parent who, mental health and addictions, I can understand kind of some of the dynamics that come with that. figuring out how to, blended families, right? What that looks like, and everybody's needs and our need, how that all works, right? So I feel like having those different hats has allowed me to be able to offer more in the room, in addition to my training. That life experience, I think, goes a long way. So yeah.
Yeah, it's true that one-on-one experience, that personal aspect allows you to, I guess, empathize a little more with people and come up with more, not creative, but different ways to maybe look at an issue or a problem.
Yeah, and self-disclosure is something like when you're doing your training as a therapist, there's no right or wrong. It's like if you feel it can help the client, not yourself, right? You're doing it for the client and it can help relate or help them like feel understood in a different way, then it is encouraged in a certain way if therapists feel comfortable. So I do like throw some things in here and there, and typically I get some positive feedback from my clients being like that they appreciate that I can understand what they're saying. So,
so you spent 12 years at CMHA before going back to school. School is a really big chapter. What moment or what realization made you say it's time, I have to choose myself and I need to do this now?
So I'm one of those statistics of COVID divorce. COVID, when it started, it seemed to just fast track some of the things that we were struggling with, being home more together and different views, different whatever. So we ended in July of 2020. That's kind of when we decided that was it for us. Glad we did it when we did, because we were still getting along in the sense, right? We were able to kind of figure it out. We had young kids. So once that had settled, I had always wanted to do my master's, but starting a family, a lot of the opportunities I would have had to leave and go out of town. So it just didn't make sense. So once that had settled, I decided, okay, it's my time. It's my time now to do something that I've wanted to always do. So I was grateful to be able to find an online master's program for psychotherapy that allowed me to do that work and raise my kids at the same time.
Right.
So yeah.
I think that's something we tend to forget about in the North, is the opportunity to go back to bigger schools to, further our education didn't exist in the extent that it does now prior to COVID.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's kind of one of those little mixed, I guess, almost blessings that COVID brought for the North, is the ability to connect further.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wouldn't be where I'm at now without that. So I'm grateful.
So the other thing that caught my attention in your questionnaire is that you once worked in addictions counseling, but that you felt, you used the word imposter. You felt like an imposter because people needed more support than your training covered at that time. How did that, I guess, almost discomfort shape the therapist that you eventually ended up becoming and the one that you are now?
Yeah, so I graduated from Guelph in 2012, and then I did a year. So it was a 1 year like postgraduate college program at in Aurelia. It doesn't exist anymore. And I was so excited to be able to have some tools to be able to help people. And when I started my first like 6-month contract, it was as an addiction counselor for parenting and pregnant women. So very difficult topic, difficult area to support people in their struggles. And I realized during that time is like, people who are struggling with addictions, it's more than the addiction. There's so much that is leading to that. And the schooling I did didn't prepare us for anything else but the topic of addiction. And so I was really disappointed once I was like, working in that field, that I didn't feel confident. I would go in every day anxious. I would at night try to prepare and learn all the things that I had never learned in school to try and support these people who were coming to me for help and, very vulnerable. And I weighed on me for those 6 months, like so much. I did get positive feedback from many of them, but I never felt like an imposter. I felt like I didn't feel confident. I didn't feel good about the work that I was doing then.
So it was specifically with, you said pregnant
and parenting women with addictions.
So I guess there would be almost an extra burden there. You're not dealing with one person, you're dealing with the family as a whole, the impact you have on that one person.
Yeah, understanding family dynamics, understanding like traumas, understanding and then I was young, I was in my early 20s, no experience, right? So that's where, having that life experience, I feel like I can offer more now.
Right. So you also talked about your studies being something that you were tremendously passionate about. What was one lesson or one concept that you learned during your master's that genuinely shifted how you see people or yourself?
Sorry, I got distracted. Like
That's
passionate
okay.
feeling. I've done like 10 years of postgraduate. You just my head just went there. I was like, yeah, I really do like school. Sorry, the question was, can I get that again?
What was one lesson or concept that you learned during your master's that genuinely shifted how you see people or yourself?
I think there was like one course that was really about checking in with yourself and your biases and your lenses and how that might influence how you're like seeing information. And I thought that was really helpful. Really understanding like what we bring to the table and how that can influence how we show up, our mental health, right? Making like this is everything. So making sure that I'm taking care of me so that I can show up in the best way possible. Knowing what my biases are, knowing what my, what morals and values that I was shown as a kid and how that might, influence how I see somebody else's. That was really impactful for me. And I carry that forward. I'm always checking in.
I guess, something we don't think about is checking in with ourselves on that, the specific, the morals and the values and the biases we carry when the world itself is changing at such a rapid pace. How do, it's difficult to keep a finger on how we feel and what we believe in the midst of all of that without doing those regular check-ins that I often think people aren't necessarily comfortable doing with themselves.
No, it brought a lot of uncomfortable things to the table. Growing up in North Bay, there wasn't a lot of different cultures when I was younger, right? So that was a topic that I really struggled with, and like, having like an approach that is accepting and open, and I'm like, yeah, that's me, but I've been always so nervous to use the wrong term or use the wrong whatever that would offend somebody. So I would almost be avoidant of talking about culture and spirituality and, sexuality and gender and everything, because again, those are areas that are changing, right? So that was also, I enjoyed that course as well, because it opened up my eyes again to some of the biases that not intentional, but just upbringing and modeling and
upbringing. And I find age impacts that greatly as well. Somebody like my mother or your parent who are in their, for my mom, she's 83, and keeping up with those, oftentimes older generations will misstep, not on purpose, but just because they haven't been accustomed to it. And I think possibly their mental capacity is not there to process all of the changes and retain them. I know my mom has quite often said something wrong to somebody and come to me later and said, can you tell them I'm sorry? And I've done it myself. The kids at the center I used to run, they gave me quite an education on
and I think that's important too, is like, I'm very like real in when I'm talking to people, and I'm like, if I say something, right, let me know, or like, just let me, like, keep me updated on, what you feel comfortable with, you don't, or I really like to set the stage, like when I first meet clients, if we're going to be talking about topics that, that I still kind of, I'm unsure of, or I worry about saying the wrong thing. So that's my own anxieties come into the table at times. So
exactly. Yeah. I didn't realize how many of those I had until I started working with kids. And then it was an 18-year-old that came to me and said, if you do it by mistake, it's okay. I'm not going to get mad at you. And I was like, oh, okay. He was like, I realize you're older.
Yeah, they're the best ones to learn from, right?
Yeah,
So
it's great. So,
yeah.
speaking of kids, balancing full-time work and parenting 2 young kids at the time, I think yeah, and completing your master's degree, it almost sounds superhuman. So I'm wondering what burnout looked like for you, and what kind of helped you push through that without maybe losing your heart behind the goal, because we tend to do that sometimes.
I look back now and I feel it, even just thinking about those 2.5 years. I can still feel it, and I'm grateful to be on this side of it. I knew it was going to be hard because I worked full time. I had my kids week on, week off, and I was doing schooling every day. So the days that I had my kids, I put them to bed and I was doing schooling till 1 o'clock in the morning. So every day. And I had papers to write 3 out of the 5 weeks per term. Like, it was nonstop. I lived with my sister-in-law who, I wouldn't be where I'm at without her. So she really helped out when I needed to. I really tried not to let my schooling impact my time with my kids, but there were times that I needed to do certain things. Mom guilt throughout all of that, right? Being exhausted, right? Not really showing up the best way. I had to let my friends and family know, like, I will see you in 2.5 years. I did not socialize. It was really, really hard. And then working, I was very passionate about the work that I did at CMHA. I loved training. I loved advocating. I loved, taking people under my wing and, showing them why, the potential, right, in that job. And, being there for so long, then you start to see changes and you start to get a little bit, I don't know, opinionated or whatever it is, and wanting to see change, right? That's the advocacy side that was coming out. I was seeing my peers burning out, and I'm advocating for, different things that, to help, because it was a difficult time during COVID for everybody. So that, on top of everything, I got to experience burnout. Again, something now that I can understand. I have a lot of clients coming in off work right now, so I can understand that part. I don't know. I feel like what was the question again? I kind of trailed off.
Okay. You kind of went somewhere that I want to go from there. Is you said you kind of understand your clients now, who are experiencing burnout, but going through that in that time frame for yourself, do you recognize that when it's, kind of you're approaching that point even now? Is that an awareness that you have in yourself?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. A little while ago, I noticed the first, I don't know, we had a busy week. The kids were I don't know, there's a bunch of stuff going on at home, and then starting back in my week at work. And I know I sensed a feeling in me, and I'm like, oh, I haven't felt that in a while. Like, it was just like the teeniest,
like that
tiny
little needle, right?
I'm like, oh, so what I did is I'm like, hey, I don't really have anything Friday. I'm going to book the day off. I'm going to go do some extra things around the house to start feeling like I got caught up, to kind of take away. I'm going to actually also do nothing in the evening, which I rarely do. So I listened, and then it hasn't come back. So it is something on my radar at this point, because it is a really difficult thing to go through.
So for the listeners that I want to say readers, because I come from a print-based background, for the listeners that are coming on now, who may not know, you've now got a partner that you live with, and I believe he's out of town part-time for work. And you've also got an additional 3 kids in the household to manage?
Yeah. So there's 5 kids between the ages of 6 and almost 10. 3 his, 2 of mine, 4 boys, 1 girl. So yeah,
a lot of protectors.
Yeah, it's a busy house, but it's pretty cool how they do their thing. Yeah.
So yeah, I can imagine though that, just trying to juggle it all, like I watch the updates of things that you're doing as a family, and I kind of go, how? You've often made that comment about me, but on the flip side, I've kind of done it with you, is like, how do you manage that? I managed 2 plus school and work. So I can't imagine doing 5.
I feel like it's at a similar thing. What I went with when I was in school is I'm really trying to keep work and family life separate. Like I'm really trying to make sure that they don't cross over. They easily could. I could spend all day doing work stuff and growing my business, or I could spend all day like kid stuff and growing the home and renos at home and all of that. So I really have this awareness of trying to keep that separate. Me and my partner are an incredible team. Like it's if we didn't have that, I don't know how we would survive. So we both do everything we can. We don't stop, but we do everything together, which is amazing. That one of the best things he taught me is that, like, you know, let's do the dishes together. Let's go do the laundry together. Let's go do the things together rather than separate, because that's kind of our quality time together right now in the busyness of our lives. So yeah, that's how we're surviving.
So something else you mentioned that kind of caught my eye is that you mentioned choosing yourself in 2022. And I wondered what choosing yourself looked like in the practical everyday moments. How did that decision also ripple into life now?
I am a people pleaser. I feel other people's, I'm an empath. I feel, so I want to give, I want to help. I want to all of that. So that's been my whole life. That's why I got into therapy, because I, again, still just love to help. Choosing me meant that I had to make some sacrifices that would negatively impact other people. It did take away from the quality of mom that I wanted to be, because my energy had to be divided. It did take away from time with my family, time with friends. My friends, like, they waited very patiently, as well as they could, especially since I was that one that I was their go-to person usually, right? So what was the question again? I get started and then
how did it, what did choosing yourself look like in the practical and everyday moments, and how did that ripple into your life today?
Yeah. So, I think that was the first time. I remember I used to always like, okay, I haven't talked to this friend in this long. Okay, I'm going to call him up. Okay, I haven't talked to this. I always had this like agenda of like, okay, it's been a little while. I want to check in. Again, I cared, and I wanted to stay connected with people. When I decided to go to school, I there wasn't time for that. There wasn't so how that's transferred over is I continue to not feel like I have to, you know, check in or this. I do when I can, absolutely, but I don't feel this like urge and need that I have to do this or something terrible is going to happen or whatever. People have been very understanding. So it's allowed me to be more present in what I'm doing. So with my family, I can be present. I don't have to be on my phone checking in with people. With my work, I can be present and enjoy what I'm doing. So,
Okay. So the other thing is that, you know, I noticed, like you, your life, you've experienced significant loss, you know, losing your mom at a young age. And I can kind of relate to that. I was a little bit older, but lost my dad at 26. So I wondered how that grief has influenced the way that you hold space for other people's pain and healing.
Yeah, so my mom was my best friend, and she was diagnosed with cancer when I was 18. So my last day of high school, she was supposed to pick me up and never did. And she ended up in the hospital, and then she got diagnosed with cancer and fought it for 3 years, and she passed when I was 21. So losing my mom in the middle of schooling, losing her, not ever having her guidance for how to be a mom or how to do life. Like I wish she would have wrote me a book. So I'm able to carry that in, because grief, everybody experiences grief. That is unfortunately something that we all experience, right? So I can understand the pain, the loss, that, you know, something's missing in your day, or trying to adjust to a new routine, or when Bon Jovi or Shania Twain come on the radio, and how that like lights me up because I can feel connected to her. I can understand and share my experiences a little bit in that process. So, yeah.
So you also specialize in anxiety disorders. I've heard OCD and ODD thrown around a few times, and different things. And that's at a time where that's kind of a really big topic that's just, or a really big, um, I'm not sure the proper word, but a really big, there's a lot of people realizing that they have some form of anxiety that they may have in their younger years and not identified, or are just growing into it and realizing at that kind of pivotal point that that's something that they struggle with. So I
Mhm.
wondered what do you feel when people misunderstand, or what do you feel people most misunderstand about anxiety, and what gives you hope in how people are starting to talk about it?
Misunderstandings and hope and talking about it. One thing I did want to clarify, I'm very ethical in what I do as a therapist. So I always want to make sure that I'm kind of, following the proper way. So I don't like to say that I specialize because I don't feel like I'm there yet. I like to see that I'm working towards it, or that those are my areas that I'm really interested in. Just because I'm always transparent about where I'm at in my learning, and I'm still learning. But with anxiety disorders, again, like I had decided to head in that direction in my focus, because again, it's everywhere, right? It is everywhere. Everybody, someone has anxiety, right? We've experienced it. Anxiety is an emotion we all feel, but when it starts to cause like harm in our lives, then we have to kind of hone in on that a little bit more. So misunderstanding of anxiety is that we all have it. It's normal. It's actually good. Anxiety is motivating. That's why we all have it, right? It prepares us for the future, and it keeps us on guard, and, it helps us be successful in life and keep us safe. So I think that's like a misunderstanding there, is that all anxiety is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And again, what's the full question? That's the first part.
What do you feel people most misunderstand about it, and what gives you hope in how people are now starting to talk about it?
I love that, that mental health is something more and more people are talking about. I do often have some men come in, and they're like, first time and whatever. And then the positive things that they're saying after, like, I didn't realize that this is what it would be like, or I didn't realize this, or, I think just talking more about mental health has been so helpful in taking some of the shame and the stigma and away from it.
Right.
And especially being the world we're in right now, there's so much uncertainty. There's a lot of stress. We're all feeling a lot of different things, and to kind of normalize that pressure that we're all feeling, and talking openly about it, I think goes a long way in connecting us with others and not feeling alone.
Right. I think that's huge, is realizing that you're not alone, and that it is something that everyone feels, but kind of recognizing when it becomes an issue in your day-to-day.
Mm-hmm.
That was huge for me in dealing with PTSD, was, what is this, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't feel like I had a right to have that, because for some reason, I think we tend to tell ourselves that, our lives are not as bad as somebody else's, so we don't have that right.
Mm-hmm.
Thing. And then I think there's a generational too, where you grew up in a period. For myself, I'm a little bit older, so growing up in a period where you didn't share what was going on in your life was huge. So for me, coming out with the fact that, hey, this is impacting my life, in the point, to the extent where I can't leave my house.
Yeah.
I still want to have my life, but I don't know how. And then reaching out and going through therapy to kind of figure out, okay, where to from here, and how do I get over this?
Yeah.
I think that's a huge thing. And I think it is more prevalent I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's very prevalent in males to not want to admit to that, because there is still very much that whole, well, you're a guy, deal with it.
So it's society, right? And societal norms, and what they're, socialized, what's acceptable, what's not. And
it's kind of an interesting thing to look at, you know.
Mhm.
So you've kind of lived through a lot of different pressures in your life too, you know, marriage, divorce, co-parenting, schooling, building a career, and you've kind of done it all sort of at once, but also not. So I wondered how your understanding of resilience changed from, say, early adulthood to now.
I don't know, like I guess I never really, I think until the schooling and juggling all that, and I guess I never really thought I was a resilient person. I had lost my mom at a young age, and but I don't know, I didn't carry that in that way, I guess. With the schooling and stuff, and I pushed limits that I did not know existed, and succeeded. And I think I got to understand what resilience is, when you push past a boundary that you couldn't even imagine. So my my logo, I don't know if, like, wellness waves, right, is something that I feel represents my journey, right? I don't know if you're going to get to that question or not, but
I was actually. So my next
bring it.
question was, in what way does your personal journey mirror the rise, crash, and renewal of a wave? Because that is your business logo.
Yeah, I have a tattoo of a wave that says, it says, oh, I thought I have a sign. I found a sign at a garage sale that said, and it was in French. She thought she could, so she did, or she believed she could, so she did. And it was in French. And I found that when I was going through my divorce. So that hung in my room to give me, like, courage to kind of, like, push through and navigate that. And then as I went through this journey, I was looking at the wave, like, just resonated with me, the highs, the lows, the strength, the perseverance, the new beginnings, all of that. And as soon as I graduated, I got that tattooed on my body, the wave, and then that saying, because those are the things that really kind of helped me push through and understand my resilience.
Right.
So,
so the other thing, you said it's never too late to go after your dreams, and that your story, you feel, embodies that. So I wondered, what would you say to the version of yourself who once doubted whether this life that you have now was possible? What would you say to the listeners who feel the same way right now?
I had written off my dream of doing my master's. Like, I wanted it so bad. And every year or two, I would go and research and see if it was possible. And then I'd get farther in life and another kid. And, like, it was like, maybe something. And I had written it off. And that was just not for me. I should have done it before. I should have done it right away. And that's just something that I have to deal with. And that moment that I had decided, like, yeah, this is it. Like, it was incredible. So, and empowering, and, like, this is about me. This is my time. And it's, I don't know, some people talk about, like, I've done this career for 40, 50, like, whatever, like, and you imagine those things. It's like, no, you can start anytime. Like, you really, really can. And there are sacrifices, and it did not come easy. And, people may see where I'm at now, and I feel like I'm doing well, but I fought to get to where I'm at right now. So I feel like if you really, what I pull into the stuff that I do is values, right? And values are what give us courage. It gives us motivation. It gives us a reason why we're fighting so hard for something. And if we can really kind of reflect on our values, why does this matter so much? I feel like, we can do anything. Like, we could really work towards those goals, those dreams that we've kind of pushed aside.
Yeah, pushing dreams aside is a tough one. I hear it often in, again, people like my mother's age who, she was a talented artist in grade school, and she had a teacher that actually came back and taught my son, which is kind of funny given the age difference. But he tried to push her into art school. And, back then the family, it just wasn't doable. We were kind of pigeonholed into secretarial or whatever. And, I often hear that echoed in her is, oh, well, couldn't do it then, can't do it now. like, you know what, you're not dead yet.
Yeah.
So, you know,
As you say that, I just realized my grandmother, my mom's mom, went back to school, to university with 2 young kids after leaving her husband. My mom had dropped out of high school, had gone back to college while she was raising us. And then I kind of did the same thing. I just made that connection right now as you're talking about your mom, is that, you know, there's no wrong time to kind of to do that.
Exactly. So, and that maybe goes into this is going back later in life to school. It often means relearning who we are. You know, it challenges us. So what did you discover about yourself during your master's that maybe surprised you the most?
Oh.
Sorry, I asked questions.
I don't like writing papers. I prefer multiple choice, but again, pushing that, right, and finding my flow, that was something I struggled with in undergrad. Like writing one, it was incredible, let alone 3, like almost 1 a week. So like, yeah, but even doing something that I was so passionate about, it didn't seem as hard, right? Like I really enjoyed the topics. I was wanting to like just immerse myself. So learning about myself with my master's. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah, a very good question. Just learning what I'm capable of, I guess. Just juggling and mental load and all of that. I
feel like that's kind of a theme throughout for you.
I think so. I think so.
It's not a bad thing. So back to anxiety a little bit. You said anxiety often comes from trying to meet the expectations of others. Was there a point in your journey when you realized that you kind of had to redefine what success or what being enough meant to you?
I think so. For me, like I always had this mindset, I have to go as far as I can. I have to be the best. I have to all the things, to the point that I'm like, when I realized I wanted to work in mental health, I'm like, well, I have to become a psychiatrist because that's like as far as you can go. Like I wrote my MCAT once, to become a doctor, but that didn't happen. I had decided I was going to go to med anyway. My mom got sick during the time that when I had applied to do that. So I didn't study, but it was a really good practice test to go write it for 4 hours. What was the question again?
Was there a point in your journey where you realized that you had to redefine what success or being enough meant to you?
Yeah. So I think in those moments where in my mind, I had to go as far as I could and be the best, and kind of reevaluating like that I don't think that's needed. I don't have to do those things to be happy, right? That's not what success necessarily is in my world. Right. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've also supported people through some of their hardest moments. People that you're working with. What have your clients taught you about humanity, compassion, or even healing that you carry into your everyday life?
I think people are incredible, and I love, like, my favorite part of my job is that first session in getting to know somebody and hearing their stories and what they've been through. And I just find people fascinating and their strengths. And so I learn every day from so many people, and seeing, just seeing them change and seeing them fight and all the tools and absorbing this and trying this. And, they keep coming back, and I learn so much every day from the people that I talk to. And I'm so grateful, and I'm so blessed that they feel comfortable, right, to be vulnerable.
Do you sometimes feel, do they sometimes empower you to do the things that you don't think you can do?
Absolutely. Like I said, I hear so many things and so many successes and so many, triumphs, but also so many difficult things that people have pushed through, and they keep pushing. Right. And so, yeah, every day. Yeah.
It's funny how that happens, just going back to, running a youth center, and we had a kid that wasn't attending school, and we had to kind of egg this child on to go in, into high school, and, made some changes in their life, got them kind of, on the right path, and in the end attended their graduation.
Mhm.
And that, I kind of thought, that kid had to push through so much to get there.
Yeah.
And, I do have permission to speak about them. So just to put that out there, but, you know, and that taught me a lot in changes that I'm going through, is that,
Mhm.
you can push through things, but not necessarily doing it alone.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes people come to therapy as a last resort, or they're like, I don't know
Mhm.
what else to do, and that's kind of the point they get to, right? So oftentimes they feel hopeless. Like that is they come in and you could see that sense of hopelessness and like please, like I've done everything else. And starting to see that spark of hope, right? And is so incredible to see, and then seeing that build and what that turns into is pretty amazing.
I think, I've realized recently in my own journeys with, therapy and whatnot, that having somebody beside you saying that it's okay to take the time to do what you need to do is huge. How do you support the person that doesn't have somebody beside them? The person that,
There's a lot. There's I think that there's a lot of people that are trying to do things alone, whether they don't have family. Like there's a lot of social anxiety, so there's a lot of people that don't have like connections with friends or different people to kind of help push them through. Um, Connecting with others, I think, is huge. Like you said, to feel validated, to not feel alone, to normalize the things that they're going through. And oftentimes, if they don't have that in their lives, I bring that here. But even people who do have people in their lives, they often don't feel comfortable sharing, their most vulnerable thoughts or feelings, or a lot of people wear masks, right? And other people don't get to see their true selves. So I think being able to come in here and take that mask off, and being able to be vulnerable and still feel accepted by somebody for maybe the first time ever, is pretty incredible. And then taking that dynamic that we create, right? Taking the mask off, that acceptance that happens, and then taking what that feels like out in the world and trying to replicate that in their relationships, I think is amazing.
Mhm. So what advice would you give to somebody that was maybe looking at, therapy for the first time, or talking to, anyone really for the first time, but more so in seeking out that service in the community? What advice would you give somebody who maybe doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, I would say research. Sometimes, talking to people who've, known a therapist or has a therapist can go a long way, right? To kind of get that firsthand experience. Researching, making sure, like, therapists can post different things online of what their trainings are and stuff like that. I always encourage people to really research and make sure that it aligns. Doing that 15-minute consultation, I think, is huge. Most therapists offer that. You're going to kind of get a vibe, right? You're going to kind of be like, do I feel comfortable? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like I could open up with this person? Is there any red flags? Having some questions to ask that person, like what do you offer? How do you do that? Like, I think is really, really important. Because not all, just everybody, not all therapists are, all therapists have a different like modality, a different way of, their toolbox is filled with different things that they can offer clients, right? So that toolbox might not align with, what that person needs. So making sure that's also an important thing as well.
Mhm. So somebody might be comfortable with, say, art, but not necessarily comfortable with, music, or, talk.
Absolutely.
But it's funny because I used to, I go to church, and I used to go, but I could never, and I'm realizing a little bit of it is an anxiety issue, but I used to always take a sketchbook or crochet or something to keep my hands busy, because without that,
Mhm.
I couldn't internalize what I was hearing.
Yeah.
And my filters got to be so great that I couldn't open up to anyone. So having that and having a minister and ministers often kind of cross into a little bit of a counseling area, but having a minister that said, it's okay for you not to come and just sit here and stare at the pulpit. You can come and do something. That was, the change for me that kind of changed that aspect of my life. So, I imagine different therapists will bring in different, whether that's, I know that the kids at the center used to love the sand table and stuff like that. But it's funny because it's all stuff I think as somebody that was very not against, but not comfortable with therapy for a long time, they're all this too well. They're all tools that I never would have associated with therapy. Like a sandbox. To me, that's something that a kindergartner, that belongs in a kindergarten classroom. You never realize that can impact somebody, or open somebody up.
I feel really blessed. I'm in a building that has a bunch of different psychotherapy offices, and I can peek in and see, and it's exactly what you're saying. Everybody brings to the table something a little bit different. There is some of the art therapy stuff. There is, which is not me. That is not there. People do that really, really well. That is not me. There's talk therapy, right? So you come in, you talk, you kind of whatever, and then you go on with your life. This is my space here. And my lamp's on the floor, so there wasn't a bunch of light behind me. But I get a lot of positive feedback about my space and people feeling comfortable and safe. And my sister-in-law helped me put this together. So I want people to come in, take off your shoes, sit cross-legged. There's a blanket. There's a little stuffy. I want you to come in and just be you, feel comfortable. That part's important to me. And one of my favorite things that I get to see, and I deal a lot with anxiety, is oftentimes when somebody first comes into the room, there's very rigid and nervous and uncertain, and you're sitting in the chair and, talking. And by the end of the session, I've had people just sitting in the chair. And I just love it, right? Because that just shows so much in that first session where people are at. So
that's amazing. Yeah. So we have a couple of minutes left, and I have one final question. And that is, if somebody is listening right now, someone possibly overwhelmed by anxiety, life changes, grief, or, that feeling that they're maybe falling behind in life, what is one message of hope or truth that you would leave with them today?
I come down to values. What matters to you, right? What is important to you in these areas that you're struggling in? What's missing? And then I often encourage people, let's focus on that. Let's set some goals on that, right? If you're able to lean on people, let somebody know in your life what you're going through, to kind of give a little bit of that hope, that validation, to give you a bit of that strength.
Amazing. Yeah. So you operate out of a co-working space in the city, but it's very it's a very private space. Do you find are there any challenges to getting people to come to a co-working space where there's all kinds of businesses, or is it?
No, actually I think it's wonderful, because it is anonymous, right? So if you're walking in here, it's very private in the sense of you don't know what people are, coming into the building.
It's really neat building from what I've seen.
It is a cool building. It is a very cool building. And as a therapist, if you can often feel very isolated, in your own private practice, you can feel isolated and alone. I'm so it's an amazing space, and I have friends and I have peers that I can walk down the hall if I just had a difficult time and just talk about anything, right? And not about sessions or anything, but just have a place to just and you go in the kitchen and you have coworkers, right? That are not really coworkers, but they are, right? So this space is really cool for many, many reasons. So
that's amazing. Yeah. So I want to, first of all, thank you, because I know you were nervous doing this. I'm going to throw that out there. But I do want to thank you for coming on and doing this first episode. And, you may not realize this, but this is going live tomorrow on December 4th. And something I realized in terms of my life changing is that December 4th is actually the anniversary of Nicholas's attack.
Oh.
So this podcast is actually the universal heart, is the comment that kept coming back from the people that worked with him in the public, were that, despite his issues with anxiety, with, narcotics, with everything else, were that he had such a huge heart. And that's what this podcast is going to focus on as it goes forward, is sharing people's stories and their heart, because that heart is universal. So I want to thank you for that, because I didn't realize it until I was doing the write-up this morning that tomorrow is the anniversary, and that's when this first episode will go live, which was not planned at all. And that's something that, again, as you start to deal with things, you start to, dates and things start to kind of not muddle into the background, but they become less of a focus. So it had actually slipped my mind until then. So I want to thank you for being a part of that, and for, being who you are, because you're somebody I've grown to care about and love. And, I think the community is lucky to have you, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do in the future. And I'm excited to tour your space later.
Yes, I'll see you later.
Yeah. So
I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and share my story, and I hope some other people are able to kind of connect with it. And yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely. So this will go live on December 4th at 6 p.m. And I'm going to close it out here. I'm just going to ask you to stay on the line for a few minutes, but I'm going to end the recording.
Sounds good. Thank you.